Hi, so for my microculture, I decided to choose baking. I chose baking because it's always been a huge part of my life. I've always loved doing it. It's super therapeutic for me, and every family gathering, birthdays, holidays, any type of like party or whatever, even if I'm just going to my friend's house, I always love to, bake something or bring it to someone because I just feel like it brings like joy to me to bake something and then have someone else really enjoy it. And it's like kind of an artwork, honestly. And it's something you can eat and in a social setting and talk about it. And I just thought that since I enjoyed it so much, I would enjoy doing my project on it. So that's why I chose this. Well, baking actually goes back over 6,500 years ago, to when people would take wild grass grains and they would soak them in water and then they would mix them all together and create this kind of paste. And then they would dump the paste on this hot rock, this flat hot rock, and it would result in a type of bread substance. It sounds weird, like a paste, but it would end up that it would come onto this bread, and I had no idea until I, researched and looked into it. So there are a few values that come along with being a baker and participating in this microculture, and the first one is that baking is extremely meditative. It's an activity that really takes your full attention. I suffer from anxiety myself, and I've found that it's so therapeutic and super calming. It's something about the process that really just, calms me down, because you're concentrating on something else and you're concentrating on making this, whatever it may be, bread, cupcakes, cake, pastries, cookies, anything. You're concentrating on making this recipe and making everything perfect, and so you know you're not so distracted by your thoughts. And I've just found that I get out of my head and I kind of just take all the negative thoughts that I had and I put them aside while I'm baking because I'm concentrating on something else other than myself. So for the second value that comes with being a baker and being a part of the baking microculture is being creative. Creativity is a huge part of baking. You can follow a recipe to the T and you can follow every single thing perfectly, and you'll have a great piece of art. But you can really stray from any recipe and put your own twist on things and just really make them an even better, more unique piece of art than they would if you were to follow the recipe fully through. The third value would have to be skill. So I'm not saying that, if you don't have skills, you can't bake. I'm saying that, it takes, honestly, a lot of time to learn the art of baking. It's not as easy as it looks. It's easy to burn stuff. It's easy to measure the wrong amount of ingredients. There's a lot of easy, quick fixes, but there's also a lot of easy mistakes that are made. And that's okay. It takes time to build your skills. I'm not the greatest baker in the world, but I do enjoy doing it. My aunt, on the other hand, is the greatest baker I know, and she can just, throw ingredients in, and her cookies and cupcakes and everything just like come out amazing. But for me, I still kind of have to be careful and really measure out my ingredients because I haven't built up enough skills to really just go off my memory. And so, that's a huge value, is the skills that you learn from, doing it over and over and over again. So there are just 3 more other values that I wanted to talk about, not in too much detail, but the first one was that baking is one of a kind and it's super unique. You can bake all kinds of stuff. There's another one, which is connections, which, you could form connections with family members about baking. I have gotten super close with my aunt. We talk about, we share our recipes, and you could go online and go on forums and all kinds of websites where people, trade recipes and talk about baking. There's links on Facebook for recipes where people share how to cook things. If you've ever heard of The Tasty on Facebook, that's all about not just baking but cooking, but they also do baking, and people share ideas and how theirs turned out, and it's super awesome that you can form these great connections with people that you haven't even met. And the last one is just a general knowledge, and you just really gain a lot of knowledge about what it is to be a baker, and the time it takes and the time you have to put in and the type of skills that you need. Just a knowledge. I didn't know about the history of baking. I didn't know that they made paste and that was their first form of baking. I had no idea until I researched and I gained knowledge, and that is what it's all about, is really just learning new things and really just opening your mind to all the possibilities of baking. There are a few characteristics that come with baking. Typically when people think of baking, they think of a woman in the kitchen with a cute apron on, but that's far from the truth. People of all ages, genders, cultures can learn to bake. It isn't something that is done by one specific type of person. Anyone can do it. My 13-year-old brother can go downstairs and choose to bake. It is something that can really be learned and just done by anyone. People who love to bake normally have characteristics like patience, organizational skills, and they just try to have fun and enjoy what they're doing. To be in constant competition, you see on these baking shows these people, cupcake wars or cake wars. You see these people fighting for the spot, but they're not cooking and they're not baking to their full potential because they are in a rush and they're not taking their time. Normally you have, an unlimited amount of time to cook this or bake this unbelievable meal or dessert. And on these shows, while you have all this competition, that's not possible. And so, it really pays to take your time and really just enjoy what you're doing. There's a certain language and communication used within the baking microculture, and someone who isn't from this microculture would not know, or they would know, but they wouldn't know in detail, and they wouldn't know what to do if they were given the task. So some words would include, things like blanch, cool, caramelize, flute, fold in, frost, marble, a rolling boil, score, sift, and there's a lot others that I could name, not off the top of my head, but there are so many others that, it's a certain type of language, honestly, I would call it, and it's amazing. Baking has a lot of cultural and religious significance as well. Baked goods are normally served at all kinds of parties and special occasions. They're also one of the main components of a tea party. When we talked about tea parties as little girls, we always thought of having cookies and pastries and scones and all types of sweet goodies. And that tradition started in the Victoria era of Britain, which is awesome because it's cool to see how many years, back that baking originated from. And I talked about earlier with the paste that they made out of the wheat and the water and how it kind of formed a type of bread. So overall, bakers are people who carry with them patience and creativity, and that is what sets them apart from the dominant culture.